theoretically, your food is giving you all the nutrients, right? And you're
Right.
going about with your life. But practically speaking, most of us are not able to get that good balanced meal so that all the nutrients get into our body. When for a long period of time this need is not met, there is a deficiency that gets created in the body. And when the gap widens, it becomes a clinical deficiency. And then you start feeling fatigue, tiredness, sleeplessness, all of these deficiency symptoms. Technically, you need a multivitamin to fill in all these gaps so that your body does not go into the clinical deficiency side.
So, welcome to the new episode of Insights by Zarity Health, where we discuss topics related to everyday health with experts. I'm Abhimanyu Chowhan, CEO and co founder at Zarity Health, and the host. My aim from these conversations is to get practical takeaways that one can start implementing today. Today, we are discussing about multivitamins. If you haven't already, check out the previous episodes where we discuss a beginner's guide to health supplements. So, talking about multivitamins today is my co-founder. I'll invite her and then we can start.
Hi, my name is Dwija Sharma. I am a pharmacist turned entrepreneur. In the past, I have worked with Pfizer India and Zydus Cadila. Currently, I am the co-founder at Zarity, where I lead clinical, product, and operations.
Great. Let me start off by telling why is this an important topic. So I'll just read out a couple of stats which show up just when you search deficiency stats in India. It says the most prevalent micronutrient deficiency was vitamin D, which is around 61%, followed by iron deficiency, which is around 54%. And then comes vitamin B12 and iodine deficiency. So this is the numbers 61%, 51% are a huge percentage numbers. And this is why it makes sense to discuss the most common form of health supplements that everybody almost knows about if they're not living under a rock. If you're 25 plus, you've almost always taken them, right? So I would just start off by asking you this technical questions like, what really are multivitamins?
As the name suggests, multivitamin, a single product which contains multiple vitamins, is called a multivitamin. It could be tablet, capsule, syrup, powder. There is no set definition as to which dosage form is a multivitamin. And there is no standard definition as to how many vitamins and in how much quantity qualify to make a product a multivitamin. That's why you see a wide variety of products all called multivitamin, which will have all kinds of different formulations in them.
Okay, so what you're telling me is that anybody can put multiple vitamins in a capsule or a tablet and call it multivitamins. So it
And
doesn't
in
necessarily
any quantity, the quantity is
any
also
form.
not fixed,
Okay,
yes.
that's also not fixed. So if I go ahead and pick any multivitamin, I'm not guaranteed that I'm getting all the vitamins and in particular proportions. And it just
Correct.
says that this thing has multiple vitamins in it. That's the basics. Oh,
Yes,
that's interesting.
yes.
So I thought there was at least a rule which says that, okay, you need to have a minimum of this and minimum of these vitamins to call it a multivitamin tablet or a capsule. But that's not the case, it seems.
No, so like we discussed in the previous episode, because these supplements do not come under the drug category or the medicine category, there is no clear demarcation or set rules and regulations around them. They are still considered as food alternatives, food additives. So, considering them food, the regulations are a little loose. So, the quantity and the number of vitamins that qualify to make something a multivitamin is not really crystal clear.
That's super interesting because then any brand out there can create a multivitamin and promote it with all the health benefits. So then are these multivitamins the same? They are not the same, right?
No, if you pick up any two products from a pharmacist, or if you check them out, same brand but two different multivitamins, if you see, they are most probably not going to have the same composition. Either the number of vitamins could be not the same or the quantity could not be the same. So, yes, no two multivitamins are technically the same.
So it makes the job of a layperson all the more complicated that you now need to figure out a multivitamin which has almost all the things that I need. And also I need to check about how much of these am I getting per nutrient, right? But let's try and simplify that by asking you more questions. That um, basic question again, why do I need to have a multivitamin?
Theoretically, your food is giving you all the nutrients, right? And you're
Right.
going about with your life. But practically speaking, most of us are not able to get that good balanced meal so that all the nutrients get into our body. When for a long period of time this need is not met, there is a deficiency that gets created in the body. And when the gap widens, it becomes a clinical deficiency. And then you start feeling maybe fatigue, tiredness, sleeplessness, all of these deficiency symptoms. Technically, you need a multivitamin to fill in all these gaps so that your body does not go into the clinical deficiency side.
So I remember last in a previous episode that we spoke about the need of having health supplements at all, and you spoke about nutritional gaps and how I have to overcome those nutrition gaps by balancing my food. And then whatever is left, I need to balance that out with health supplements. And you also highlighted that we need to consult a doctor, which will take care of the clinical deficiency part, and then maybe speak to a clinical nutritionist which understand health supplements and reports and balance them out. But then how do I know that I need a multivitamin?
Generally speaking, you and I cannot really know if we need a single vitamin or a multivitamin. The ideal method that one must follow is to understand what kind of dietary gaps they have. It is to maybe map out whatever you're eating, calculate all the nutrients that you're getting. Once you calculate the nutrients, you know where you're lacking. And depending on if it is one vitamin or one mineral where you are lacking, or you have multiple gaps in your diet, you choose a multivitamin versus a single vitamin. But this is a very cumbersome task, right? Who's going to go ahead
Yeah,
and start writing
so
everything,
much
then
maths.
calculating? Yeah, too much
Yeah,
math. Right. So the ideal method to go by is probably consulting a doctor first if you have certain symptoms. The doctor will rule out if it is associated with a clinical deficiency or not. Probably they'll ask you to get some lab tests done.
right.
Now, another problem here is that you cannot do blood tests for all the vitamins and minerals. It will be super costly for you. So the doctor tries to gauge deficiencies through your symptoms and confirm them through some tests. For the remaining things, maybe you can consult a nutritionist, a clinical nutritionist, I would say, who can understand your symptoms, also understand what the doctor is saying, and then probably calculate or do all the maths that you're supposed to do in the background. Try to identify where the gaps are, probably give you a corrective diet so that these gaps can be met through food, and whatever then remains is then added in the form of a dietary supplement. So if you have no symptoms, I would say go to a clinical nutritionist. They will map out your diet, they'll do all the maths, and then they will give you a corrective diet so that most of the things can be fulfilled through your meal, and whatever is remaining, they then plan the supplements.
Okay. I had a friend, we were discussing about this with them, and they brought out a basic question to me and saying that, okay, when I spoke about deficiencies and I spoke about the need of taking health supplements and maybe even consulting a nutritionist. Now, it's a very practical question when somebody comes and asks you that, does everybody need to consult a nutritionist? Or one just goes ahead and gets a multivitamin and that's about it?
Taking a multivitamin is very easy. You can just order it online, go to a chemist shop and buy it. But technically speaking, you might not need multivitamin for certain conditions, and you would definitely need multivitamin for certain other conditions. And like we discussed, not all multivitamins are the same. You might just go ahead and take a multivitamin. It might not be beneficial at all, and you would still have that deficiency, and you would still have those symptoms, and you'll find that I'm taking this multivitamin every single day and still nothing's happening. I should Yeah, there are 4 categories of people who should definitely be considering taking supplements. First kind of people who are taking any kind of restrictive diet. So restrictive diet is something where you're restricting your diet. So it could be because of a food choice or a belief. Maybe you're a vegetarian, you are a vegan, or something where you have an allergy. You cannot take certain kinds of foods. or you are on a calorie restriction. Maybe you have been told to lose weight, so you're restricting your diet again. Anybody who is on a restriction when it comes to diet, they would definitely need some supplements because they are restricting themselves from a lot of different kinds of foods. The second kind of people is people who are affected by certain diseases. If you have celiac disease or you have Crohn's disease, you have a risk of nutritional deficiencies because the absorption of nutrition by default is poor in these conditions, right? Again, if you have type 2 diabetes, or probably most of our parents is in that age group who have diabetes, and they are being
Diabetes,
given
yes.
metformin for that. It's a very commonly prescribed medicine. So by default, with metformin, there is a drug-induced deficiency of B12,
What do you mean by drug-induced deficiencies? Is this something new?
which means that when you are given metformin and you're taking metformin, by default, the body is going to be short on B12. It is induced by the drug. So by default, you would need a B12 supplement to reach that normal level,
Right, and
right?
B12 has its effects, right? B12, what happens with low B12? Lose your sleep, erratic patterns, and you start
Yeah,
feeling lethargic. So hold on, I am anyways getting less of B12, and what you're saying is, if somebody is diabetic, right, and they are being given metformin, it's depleting your B12 levels beyond what you're getting. Right? So
correct.
that's crazy. So what do you do in that case?
Supplementation. So ideally, the doctor should consider this, and when they are prescribing metformin, should also be prescribing a clinical grade supplement of B12 so that the body is able to replenish the B12 levels. So that is the ideal method. Suppose your doctor has not given the supplement yet, it would be worthwhile to revisit the doctor. Maybe they'll run some tests, and probably then they would prescribe certain medications. The main source of vitamin B12 is from animal sources. Very little amount would come in through milk and milk products, right? So, and anyways, we as a population are cutting down on a lot of milk, right? We do not take as much milk as we grow old. We start as children, we are taking one glass or two glasses of milk. Slowly, as we grow older, so that glass of milk is replaced by maybe coffee and tea. So the calcium or the milk products are already less in our diet, right? So on top of it, you're not getting B12 from any other source. To top it, you're taking metformin, which is further depleting your absorption of B12. So
Interesting.
it's kind of mandatory to get this evaluated for anybody who's diabetic taking metformin.
So that's a new thing, drug-induced deficiencies. Very
Nutrition
interesting.
deficiency, yes.
Yeah, you were talking
Uh,
about the kind of people who need. Yes.
Yes, so people with restrictive diet, number one, people with certain diseases, right? People who are taking certain kinds of medications. The third is women who are pregnant. They are most definitely requiring additional nutrition, right?
Right.
So they require supplements, or gynecologists mostly always is prescribing supplements for them. And fourth is rare case of people who have gone ahead and gotten bariatric surgery done because the stomach size itself reduces after that surgery. So the absorption by default is going to reduce. So they would require additional nutrients so that the balance is maintained. So
Got
these
it.
are the specific use cases where most of us are anyways going to fall. Mostly the bigger bucket is people with restrictive diet, which are vegetarians, vegans, all of us. And
Somebody
people
who's
with
lactose
certain
intolerant who can't have milk, right? Okay,
correct.
got it. Yeah. Isn't it very convenient to go ahead and buy a pill or a tablet which contains almost all the vitamins? That's what I understand from it when they say multivitamin. But then I also see that there are vitamin D tablets available. Then you have protein powder. And then you also have vitamin B12 melts or vitamin B12 capsules. So it's really confusing because I'm not aware about how much do I need. So it's convenient to take one multivitamin, but I'm confused. Should I take a multivitamin or should I go for these single nutrients? How do I go about choosing them?
Yes, like we discussed, the multivitamins is not a fixed concoction of this much of this mineral, this much of this vitamin. So taking a multivitamin on your own might not always be very wise. it is better that when you're given those once a week vitamin D capsules for 8 weeks generally, that is to combat a clinical deficiency which is mostly always prescribed by the doctor. Similarly, when you are extremely short on vitamin B12, there is also an injection that is given for B12, to replenish the reserves in the body. But what generally happens is that after you've done all of these things, after the clinical deficiencies are met, the doctor has prescribed you certain supplements for a certain period of time, like for example 2 months, maximum 3 months. Then you are back to that normal diet that you were taking, which made you deficient in the first
Which got
place,
me
right?
there in the first place. Yeah.
Correct, yes.
Right.
So you are most probably going to again get into the cycle of having those deficiency in a period of time. So the best method is still to always get yourself evaluated for what you're eating. Once you know where the problem lies, you are preventing that cycle from happening again. You are correcting your diet to an extent, and wherever you still have those deficiencies, like the food gaps, you are taking dietary supplements. The nutritionist is making sure that whatever medicines you are taking, this supplement that they're prescribing does not interact with them. It is not interacting with the foods that you have been taking. Otherwise, what could happen is if you're taking the dietary supplement on your own, just looking at an ad or probably going to the chemist and asking for a good supplement, you might still be short on certain kinds of vitamins or minerals that you're not even aware of. So you will be spending all that money and maybe having no difference at all. So the best method is to go get a professional help and only then start taking these supplements.
Right. So the short answer to the question that should I take a multivitamin or a single nutrient is I should go ahead and speak to an expert, and they are most likely to tell me which specific thing requires a specific dose and whether I'm okay with a multivitamin or not. Right. So I was just recently speaking to a doctor, and she describes how even kids aged, I think, 9 to 15 are advised to have their cholesterol level checked once in 5 years. This is new. And then adults are most likely to get it checked, or should most likely get it checked every 2 years to see if their cholesterol levels are high or not. But it's a very common trait. Whenever I get my lab test done, my B12 is always low. That's a given thing. I'm almost used to it. But when I hear you speak about the quantities of B12 and that I'm taking on a daily level, I go to a doctor, I get these injections, or I might get something for the B12s, and then it keeps happening again every year. But we don't really address the root cause of the problem. Now that is giving us harm, if I'm not mistaken. While I'm low on B12, it's harming me.
Correct.
Right.
Most
So,
common problem with the deficiencies are that your productivity is really low. That is the number one symptom you see, that you're either not able to sleep properly or you're lethargic through the day or you wake up very tired in the morning. So these are all deficiencies which are showing up as symptoms.
So let's say I feel one of these symptoms, I'm waking up tired, and I figure I get these tests done, and I figure that I'm low on vitamin B12, and I go ahead and don't take an expert advice, and I go and buy vitamin B12 capsules. Firstly, is there a harm in this approach?
So generally speaking, there is something called an RDA, which is the recommended dietary allowance, right? So that is like the minimum requirement of every vitamin given out by ICMRs. Then there is something called the tolerable upper limit, right? For most of the vitamins, the gap is really high. You shouldn't be worried about overdosing on vitamins. That in most cases wouldn't happen. You would not be overdosing unless you are taking clinical grade supplements which are in the drug form and you're taking multiple doses of it. Otherwise, most probably you're not going to be exceeding the upper limit. So it is relatively, taking vitamins and minerals is relatively safe. You can take it on your own. But the problem is, since you don't know how much you need, there are all sorts of supplements with varied quantity of, say, for example, B12 in it. So suppose there's something as low as 2 mg to 1500 mg. All sorts of variations are available. How do you know which one to choose? How much does your body need? How much are you getting through the diet? How much extra do I need to supplement? You wouldn't know. So there are very high chances that although it is safe, you wouldn't really overdose. But if you take these supplements on your own, you might still have those deficiencies, and you might end up just wasting money on these supplements. And also because supplements are not a 5-day, 10-day course that you do and you're good with it. It is like a long-term practice that you inculcate, right? You have to take it for a longer period of time. If you're not taking the correct one, it might not be harming you, but if it doesn't really help you out, you might waste a lot of money over the period of time.
Yeah, so it's safe to eat anything and not worry about overdosing it as far as the general practice is concerned. But I still feel these symptoms and I go ahead and buy vitamin B12 melts or capsules, right? How do I know that it is working on me or not? It's a very simple thing that I want to solve.
A lot of deficiencies, unfortunately, are silent, and we do not come to know, because the deficiency does not just happen like an infection. It happens so gradually that you don't really know from when, or you don't really start experiencing something very big from day one. And there are a lot of vitamins and minerals for you might not even know that you are deficient for a very long time, or not know at all. For example, if you have vitamin C deficiency, unless it's a very extreme case of deficiency, you might start having skin related issue, immunity related issue that you might start observing that is correlated with vitamin C. But otherwise, in your daily diet, if you are a little short on vitamin D, or for example calcium, you'll not come to know. So if you're taking a supplement to replenish those, you might not even come to know that those are replenished and you're feeling better. But for certain vitamins, it is very easy to see. Vitamin B12, vitamin D, iron, all of these deficiencies have a very clear indication in terms of symptoms. And once you replenish those reserves, the symptoms go away. So you cannot really make out if your multivitamin is working or not working. You're not always going to feel better after taking a multivitamin. But that's the nature of vitamins and minerals, how will they play out in the body.
Interestingly, I play sport almost. I make it a practice to play at least one sport 3 days a week. And I see a lot of people complaining of shoulder pain. And I remember a conversation we had about calcium deficiency, or the other conversation about osteoporosis. Why don't we talk about that, and maybe that could help set the gravity to the discussion that we are having.
Calcium deficiency is something which is extremely prevalent in India. And if you try to do maths that we were talking about, most of us are going to be calcium deficient, especially women. Also, that has got a lot to do with what kind of dietary habits we have now. Because the consumption of milk and milk products is reducing, or we are having other alternatives to it, the calcium we require is around 1000 mg per day. And
Okay.
a glass of milk is kind of giving you around 120 to 150 mg per day. Right? So if you're thinking a
110.
glass of milk is really going to take care of your
Suffice your
calcium,
calcium, yeah.
yeah, it really
Not.
is not going to. Yeah. And that
Hmm.
is mostly the richest source of calcium that we can think of during the day. Apart from that, there are tits and bits from which we'll get calcium through various means. But milk is the number one source. And if you're cutting down on maybe milk, or if you are vegan, or you have lactose intolerance, probably you're not taking milk, the deficiency is going to build up. And bones are something you will not feel that problem, suddenly start feeling that problem. It will just grow and build up, right? The calcium reserves from the bones start leaching out into the body, because the calcium in the blood has to be maintained. So the body starts pulling out the calcium reserves that are there in the bones. So when you have calcium deficiency, over a period of time, you will have your bones getting weak and weak. So multiple fractures, easily getting fractures, having the bone density reduce. Especially it starts to kick in when you are doing a lot of physical activity after a certain age, or generally you start feeling that, okay, the bones are weakening. So uh, that's how calcium plays out. And if
That's
not,
osteoporosis, if I'm not wrong.
yes, correct.
Okay. All right.
So, which most of the Indians, more especially women, definitely have this problem. If you talk to an
Hmm.
orthopedic, they'll probably tell you the number of cases they see for it. And whenever you go to an orthopedic, they are most definitely going to give you a calcium supplement, because
Mm,
generally, as a population,
mm,
we are very low on calcium. We are also very low
mm.
on vitamin D. So vitamin D is required for calcium absorption. So in case you're taking a good amount of calcium, if you have low vitamin D, the absorption is going to be poor. So in either case, you're going to be low on calcium.
Right.
So calcium and vitamin D is something that most of us are low on, and the doctors are generally going to prescribe.